back to Tech Tips and Fixes. Today we've got a Marshal amp here that we're going to retube and set the bias on. So it comes to us in this very nice quilted case. And here's the amp. We've got nameplate on the back, an information plate that suggests that this amp is built in 2013 in the 19th month, and we're just going to jump right in here and open it up, get in there so that we can measure the bias voltage, and that will give us the bias current, and we'll see if we can test it out. I think first we're going to check to see where it's at. I don't think there are any real problems with this amp, but it hasn't been retubed for quite a long time. And so I want to see what the bias is at right now. And once we have done that, then we'll change the tubes and we'll reset the bias to the range that the customer wants. And then I'll test it out a little bit. So that's where we're going with this. Stay tuned. Okay, I've got my meter hooked up to the test points for setting the bias. The way this works is that we set the bias for one of the output tubes on this pot while measuring the millivoltage on this pin. Ground is the center pin, and we'll connect to the other pin and adjust this pot afterwards. So there's no power on there right now. And I should also, for safety's sake, mention that these tube amps, they operate with very high voltages, up in the 450 volt range, some of them. So if you are doing this for the first time, be very careful, or don't do it at all if you're not comfortable working with high voltages. One good rule of thumb, they say, when you're working on something like this, is only one point of contact. Keep one of your hands in your pockets and make sure that you're not touching exposed parts or anything like this. I'm using a wooden pointer just to point some things out here because that is non-conductive. Okay, so I'm going to turn on the power to this now, see what kind of a voltage we get. There we go. Okay, so we're reading 27.3 millivolts. This is telling us that that the bias current on this side is 27.4 milliamps. I think it's a direct correlation between the millivolts and the milliamps. So that would be considered a little bit low, and we'll probably set that higher. My understanding is that these should be set somewhere between 27 and 40 milliamps. And the higher the milliamps, the warmer the sound that you get. If you're low like that, they tend to have a colder sound. Okay, so we're getting 27.1 on the one side, and I'm going to switch over now to the other side and see what we've got. I'm going to be very careful about this. They do say that the difference in millivolts from one side to the other should be no more than 3 milliamps, and as you can see there, we actually are measuring 35.8, 36 in that range, and that's quite a lot more than the other one. So there's quite an imbalance from one tube to the other. So that definitely is not what we want. Alright, so I now have the amplifier chassis turned over the other way, and we're looking at the tubes and transformers on the top here. I'm not going to go through details of what exactly each tube is, other than to say that obviously these two tubes here, the EL34s, are the power amp tubes, which would make sense by their size. The other tubes in here are basically all the same tubes. One of them that they've got in this particular amp is a 12AX7, but that's pin for pin compatible with the ECC83s that are in the other 4 positions. Now, I realize that guitar players, being much more discerning than bass players, I'm a bass player, can tell the differences and the subtle nuances between different tubes. I can't claim to be able to do that, but I will defer to their superior understanding of the subtleties of sound. I'm being facetious, of course. Some of my best friends are guitar players. Anyway, what we're going to do here at the customer's request is we're just replacing all these tubes. These tubes have not been replaced for at least 7 years from what I understand, and so the customer would prefer to replace them all, and probably, I'm guessing, keep the old ones as spares. And so that's what we're going to do. We're just going to pop them out, put in new ones, and after that we'll check and adjust the bias. Put the shield cap back on this tube. I believe that is basically there to minimize any pickup, electromagnetic pickup in that tube, and I suspect it's primarily because it's right next to the output transformer, and there could be magnetic fields there that could leak over. So now for the power tubes. Get this started right. Again, the information, the current, transconductance, and so on is matched on the same values on both tubes. Okay, there we have the tubes in place. I'm going to flip this over again, and we'll power it up and see what we've got for bias currents. I'm going to connect up my voltmeter. I'm going to put it on 300 millivolt range. And I think I'll let things warm up for a little while. I've got a plastic screwdriver here that I'm going to use to adjust these, just to keep my fingers back out of the higher voltages. And that seems really low. Okay, I'm just bringing that one up a little bit. I'm looking for about 35 milliamps. It's been said that from the factory these come with the bias current set pretty low, around 30, and that kind of gives it a cold, they use the word cold, and that again relates to the warmth of the sound. And I know that a lot of guitar players would rather trade off a little bit of tube life for a warmer sound. So that's why I'm kind of shooting for about the 35 milliamp range. Okay, about 36. Let's try the other side, see what we've got. Okay, that's still down around the 21, 22 range, so I'll bring that up. Easy to overshoot. Okay, so we're at about 35.4 on that one once it settles out. And on this one, that's pretty close. Just slightly over 35 on each, and that should be a little warmer than it comes from the factory as. Before I finish, I do want to measure the plate voltage. It's a little bit of a scary feeling. Again, I should say, you haven't done this kind of thing before, you want to be very careful about attempting something like that. 460 volts, that can knock you off your feet. Working in industry at one time, I was hit with 600 volts. I instantaneously was laying on my back on the floor, wondering what happened. Okay, so I think that's set up. I think I'm going to let it sit for a few minutes, and I'm going to test those voltages, the plate voltage and the voltage we're using to measure the bias current, just to confirm that it's stable. And then I will probably put this thing back together and display my exquisite guitar playing skills. And that is very facetious. Okay, I warned you guys, I'm not really an electric guitar player. I play a little bit of acoustic. I'm a bass player, but I'll just play a few chords, and just so you can get a little bit of an idea of the sound. I'm sure you can't tell that much anyways through your computer speakers or whatever you're watching this on, but I just wanted to show you that this amp works. You can draw your own conclusions about the sound of the amp. I've got it turned on at a fairly low volume, and I'm on the clean channel, so I'll just play some chords so you can get an idea what this sounds like, I guess. Not in very good tune either. I don't have my tuner here, so I'm going by ear. I'll go to the overdrive channel here, which is quite a bit more aggressive. conclusions from that. And please, no comments about my guitar playing. Okay, I'm going to probably add a little bit to this video about the calculator online, and then I think we'll wrap this up. So this is a little bit low tech, but I'm just going to take a quick shot of my computer screen and this biasing tube amplifier calculator. I'll put the link to this in the description, but it's pretty straightforward. All you do is you tell it what your plate voltage is of your amp and the output tube you're using, and it will give you outputs or information about the bias current that you should have for for the bias point you want. And my understanding is that you're looking for, as it says here, a recommended bias point for AB amps, Class AB amps of 70%. That's what I've been hearing as I've done a little research online. And so basically what that tells you then is that with using EL34 tubes with a which are maximum dissipation of 25 watts, and I measured the plate voltage on this amplifier at 464 volts, which is a little lower than what I had seen with some of the demonstrations online. And it says that the recommended bias point is then 70%, and this isn't a Class A amp, so that one doesn't apply. So it just basically shows that a 70% bias point might be as high as 37 milliamps, and I set this to around 35. So I think we're a little under what the 70% bias point is, which is probably a wise thing to do. It means that it can run a little cooler than the maximum that you want to go to. I don't think you would want to run it up in these higher bias points because I think that would deteriorate the output tubes fairly quickly. That being said, if you want even warmer sound, you could probably tweak it just a little higher than what I did. I'm going to give this back to the customer and see what he thinks. He has a much better ear for the sound he wants, and if necessary we could tweak it just a little higher. But for now, I think we'll leave it at 35. Thanks for watching my video and for being part of my channel. During these early days of getting this channel off the ground, I've been thinking a lot about what I'd like the channel to be about. How I'd like it to be a bit more than just sharing technical information and how to fix things. I'm retired, and at this age of life, you begin to think about what is and what has been meaningful and worthwhile in life. And while I don't intend to get too heavy about it, from time to time I'd like to share some of those thoughts on this channel. So on some videos I'm going to include a short section at the end that might consider what I think I've learned from either the video project or something else that might seem pertinent to me at the time. I'm a Christian, so my world and life views are informed by that core aspect of my life. Like I said, I don't plan to get too heavy, and this will just be a short segment at the end. So if you're not interested in hearing what I have to say, please feel free to stop watching at that point in the video. I won't be offended. Also, this is not an invitation to enter into debates, arguments, or criticism, so please don't try to instigate any of those things in the comments. If you do, I'll just delete it. So here's my first one. It's a short Bible verse found in the book of Proverbs, where you can always go to find wisdom and good judgment. If you think about it, maybe this describes what I'm doing on this channel, so I don't want to take myself too seriously. Proverbs 12:23 says, "The wise don't make a show of their knowledge, but fools broadcast their foolishness." Thought that was kind of interesting. Might be worth thinking through a little bit. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.